Chapter 21. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, Speak to the priests, the sons of Aharon, and say to them, No one is to be defiled for the dead among his people, except for his relatives who are nearest to him, for his mother and for his father, and for his son and for his daughter, and for his brother and for his maid and sister who is near to him, who has had no husband, for her he is defiled. A leader does not defile himself among his people to profane himself. They do not make any bald place on their heads, and they do not shave the corner of their beard, and they do not make a cutting in their flesh. They are set apart to Elohim, and do not profane the name of their Elohim, for they bring the fire offerings of Yahuwah, and the bread of their Elohim, and shall be set apart. They do not take a woman who is a whore, or a defiled woman, and they do not take a woman put away from her husband, for he is set apart to his Elohim. And you shall set him apart, for he brings the bread for your Elohim, he is set apart to you. For I, Yahuwah, setting you apart, am set apart. And when the daughter of any priest profanes herself by whoring, she profanes her father, she is burned with fire. And the high priest among his brothers, on whose head the anointing oil was poured, and who is ordained to wear the garments, does not unbind his head, nor tear his garments, nor come near any dead body, nor defile himself for his father or his mother, nor go out of the set-apart place, nor profane the set-apart place of his Elohim. For the sign of dedication of the anointing oil of his Elohim is upon him. I am Yahuwah. And let him take a wife in her maidenhood. A widow or one put away, or a defiled woman, or a whore, these he does not take. But a maiden of his own people he does take as a wife. And he does not profane his offspring among his people, for I am Yahuwah, who sets him apart. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to Aharon, saying, No man of your offspring throughout their generations who has any defect is to draw near to bring the bread of his Elohim. For any man who has a defect is not to draw near, a man blind or one lame, or disfigured or deformed, a man who has a broken foot or broken hand, or is a hunchback or a dwarf, or a man who has a defect in his eye, or eczema or scab, or is a eunuch. No man among the offspring of Aharon the priest who has a defect is to come near to bring the offerings made by fire to Yahuwah. He has a defect, he does not come near to bring the bread of his Elohim. He does eat the bread of his Elohim, both the most set apart and the set apart. Only he does not go near the veil or approach the slaughter place, because he has a defect, lest he profanes my set apart places. For I am Yahuwah, who sets them apart. Thus Moshe spoke to Aharon and his sons, and to all the children of Israel. Chapter 22. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to Aharon and his sons, that they separate themselves from the set-apart offerings of the children of Israel, and that they do not profane my set-apart name and what they set apart to me. I am Yahuwah. Say to them, Any man of all your offspring throughout your generations who draws near the set-apart offerings which the children of Israel set apart to Yahuwah, while he has uncleanness upon him, that being shall be cut off from before me. I am Yahuwah. Any man of the offspring of Aharon who is a leper or has a discharge does not eat the set-apart offerings until he is clean. And whoever touches what is rendered unclean by a being, or a man who has had an emission of semen, or a man who touches any swarming creature by which he would be made unclean, or by any being by whom he would become unclean, even any of his uncleanness, the being who has touched it shall be unclean until evening, and does not eat the set-apart offerings, but shall bathe his body in water. And when the sun goes down, he shall be clean, and afterward eat the set-apart offerings, because it is his food. He does not eat that which dies or is torn by beasts, becoming unclean by it. I am Yahuwah. And they shall guard my charge, lest they bear sin for it and die thereby, when they profane it. I, Yahuwah, set them apart. And no stranger eats the set-apart offering. A sojourner with a priest or a hired servant does not eat of the set-apart offering. But when the priest buys a being with his silver, he does eat of it. And when one who is born in his house does eat his food. And when a priest's daughter is married to a stranger, she does not eat of the set-apart offerings. But when a priest's daughter is a widow or put away, and has no child, and has returned to her father's house as in her youth, she does eat her father's food, but no stranger eats of it. And when a man eats the set-apart offering by mistake, then he shall give a set-apart offering to the priest, and add 1/5 to it. And let the priest not profane the set-apart offerings of the children of Israel, which they lift up to Yahuwah, or allow them to bear the crookedness of trespass when they eat their set-apart offerings. For I am Yahuwah, who sets them apart. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to Aaron and his sons, and to all the children of Israel, and say to them, Any man of the house of Israel, or of the strangers in Israel, who brings his offering for any of his vows, or for any of his voluntary offerings which they bring to Yahuwah as an ascending offering, for your acceptance is a male, a perfect one, from the cattle, from the sheep, or from the goats. Whatever has a defect you do not bring, for it is not acceptable to you. And when a man brings a slaughtering of peace offerings to Yahuwah, to complete a vow or a voluntary offering from the cattle or the sheep, it is to be perfect to be accepted, let there be no defect in it. Those blind or broken or cut, or having an ulcer or eczema or scabs, you do not bring to Yahuwah, nor make an offering by fire of them on the slaughter place to Yahuwah. As for a bull or a lamb that has any limb deformed or dwarfed, you do prepare as a voluntary offering, but for a vow it is not accepted. Do not bring to Yahuwah what is bruised or crushed, or torn or cut, nor do it in your land. And from a son of a stranger's hand you do not bring any of these as the bread of your Elohim, for their corruption is in them, and defects are in them, they are not acceptable for you. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, When a bull or a sheep or a goat is born, it shall be 7 days with its mother, and from the 8th day and thereafter it is acceptable as an offering made by fire to Yahuwah. But do not slay a cow or a sheep and its young on the same day. And when you slaughter a slaughtering of thanksgiving to Yahuwah, slaughter it for your acceptance. It is eaten the same day, leave none of it till morning. I am Yahuwah. And you shall guard my commands and do them. I am Yahuwah. And do not profane my set-apart name, and I shall be set apart among the children of Israel. I am Yahuwah, who sets you apart, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim to be your Elohim. I am Yahuwah. Chapter 23. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, The appointed times of Yahuwah, which you are to proclaim as set-apart gatherings, my appointed times are these. 6 days work is done, but the 7th day is a Sabbath of rest, a set-apart gathering. You do no work, it is a Sabbath to Yahuwah in all your dwellings. These are the appointed times of Yahuwah, set-apart gatherings which you are to proclaim at their appointed times. In the first new moon, on the 14th day of the new moon, between the evenings, is the Pesach, to Yahuwah. And on the 15th day of this new moon, it is the festival of Matzah, to Yahuwah. 7 days you eat unleavened bread. On the first day you have a set-apart gathering, you do no servile work, and you shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahuwah for 7 days. On the 7th day is a set-apart gathering, you do no servile work. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and you shall say to them, When you come into the land which I give you, and shall reap its harvest, then you shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest to the priest, and you shall wave the sheaf before Yahuwah for your acceptance. On the morrow after the Sabbath, the priest waves it. And on that day when you wave the sheaf, you shall prepare a male lamb, a year old, a perfect one, as an ascending offering to Yahuwah, and its grain offering, 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil, an offering made by fire to Yahuwah, a sweet fragrance, and its drink offering, 1/4 of a hin of wine. And you do not eat bread or roasted grain or fresh grain until the same day that you have brought an offering to your Elohim, a law forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings. And from the morrow after the Sabbath, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, you shall count for yourselves 7 completed Sabbaths. Until the morrow after the 7th Sabbath, you count 50 days. Then you shall bring a new grain offering to Yahuwah. Bring from your dwellings for a wave offering 2 loaves of bread of 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour they are, baked with leaven, first fruits to Yahuwah. And besides the bread you shall bring 7 lambs a year old, perfect ones, and 1 young bull and 2 rams. They are an ascending offering to Yahuwah, with their grain offering and their drink offerings, an offering made by fire for a sweet fragrance to Yahuwah. And you shall offer 1 male goat as a sin offering, and 2 male lambs for a year old as a slaughter of peace offerings. And the priest shall wave them besides the bread of the first fruits as a wave offering before Yahuwah, besides the 2 lambs. They are set apart to Yahuwah for the priests. And on this same day you shall proclaim a set-apart gathering for yourselves. You do no servile work on it, a law forever in your dwellings throughout your generations. And when you reap the harvest of your land, do not completely reap the corners of your field when you reap, and do not gather any gleaning from your harvest. Leave them for the poor and for the stranger. I am Yahuwah your Elohim. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, In the 7th new moon, on the first day of the new moon, you have a rest, a remembrance of Teruah, a set-apart gathering. You do no servile work, and you shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahuwah. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, On the 10th day of the 7th new moon is Yom HaKippurim. It shall be a set-apart gathering for you, and you shall afflict your beings, and shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahuwah. And you do no work on that same day, for it is Yom Kippurim, to make atonement for you before Yahuwah your Elohim. For any being who is not afflicted on that same day, he shall be cut off from his people. And any being who does any work on that same day, that being I shall destroy from the midst of his people. You do no work, a law forever throughout your generations and all your dwellings. It is a Sabbath rest to you, and you shall afflict your beings. On the 9th day of the new moon at evening, from evening to evening, you observe your Sabbath. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, On the 15th day of the 7th new moon is the festival of Sukkot, for 7 days to Yahuwah. On the first day is a set-apart gathering. You do no servile work. For 7 days you bring an offering made by fire to Yahuwah. On the 8th day there shall be a set-apart gathering for you, and you shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahuwah. It is a closing festival. You do no servile work. These are the appointed times of Yahuwah, which you proclaim as a set-apart gatherings, to bring an offering made by fire to Yahuwah, an ascending offering and a grain offering, a slaughtering and a drink offering, as commanded for every day. Besides the Sabbaths of Yahuwah, and besides your gifts, and besides all your vows, and besides all your voluntary offerings which you give to Yahuwah, on the 15th day of the 7th new moon, when you gather in the fruit of the land, celebrate the festival of Yahuwah for 7 days. On the first day is a rest, and on the 8th day is a rest. And you shall take for yourselves on the first day the fruit of good trees, branches of palm trees, twigs of leafy trees, and willows of the stream, and shall rejoice before Yahuwah your Elohim for 7 days. And you shall celebrate it as a festival to Yahuwah for 7 days in the year, a law forever in your generations. Celebrate it in the 7th new moon. Dwell in booths for 7 days. All who are native-born Israel dwell in booths, so that your generations know that I made the children of Israel dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Mizraim. I am Yahuwah your Elohim. Thus did Moshe speak of the appointed times of Yahuwah to the children of Israel. Chapter 24. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, Command the children of Israel that they bring to you clear oil of pressed olives for the light, to make the lamps burn continually. Outside the veil of the witness, in the tent of appointment, Aharon is to arrange it from evening until morning before Yahuwah continually, a law forever throughout your generations. He is to arrange the lamps on the clean gold lampstand before Yahuwah continually. And you shall take fine flour and bake 12 cakes with it, 2/10 of an ephah in each cake. And you shall set them in 2 rows, 6 in a row, on the table before Yahuwah. And you shall put clear frankincense on each row, and it shall be on the bread as a remembrance portion, an offering made by fire to Yahuwah. On every Sabbath he is to arrange it before Yahuwah continually, from the children of Israel, an everlasting covenant. And it shall be for Aharon and his sons, and they shall eat it in the set-apart place, because it is most set apart to him from the offerings of Yahuwah made by fire, an everlasting law. And the son of a Israeli woman, whose father was a Mitzrayim man, went out among the children of Israel. And the Israeli woman's son and a man of Israel strove in the camp. And the Israeli woman's son blasphemed the name and cursed, so they brought him to Moshe. Now his mother's name was Shelomith, the daughter of Dibri, of the tribe of Dan, and they put him under the guard, that it might be declared to them at the mouth of Yahuwah. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, Bring the one who is cursed outside the camp, and all those who heard him shall lay their hands on his head, and all the congregation shall stone him. And speak to the children of Israel, saying, Anyone who curses his Elohim shall bear his sin. And he who blasphemes the name of Yahuwah shall certainly be put to death, and all the congregation certainly stone him, the stranger as well as the native. When he blasphemes the name, he is put to death. And a man who strikes the being of any man shall certainly be put to death, and he who strikes a beast repays it, body for body. And when a man inflicts a blemish upon his neighbor, as he has done so it is done to him, fracture for fracture, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. As he inflicts a blemish upon him, so it is done to him. And he who strikes a beast repays it, and he who strikes a man to death is put to death. You are to have one right ruling for the stranger and for the native, for I am Yahuwah your Elohim. And Moshe spoke to the children of Israel, and they brought the one who cursed outside the camp, and stoned him with stones. And the children of Israel did as Yahuwah commanded Moshe. Chapter 25. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe on Mount Sinai, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, When you come into the land which I give you, then the land shall observe a Sabbath to Yahuwah. 6 years you sow your field, and 6 years you prune your vineyard, and gather in its fruit. But in the 7th year the land is to have a Sabbath of rest, a Sabbath to Yahuwah. Do not sow your field, and do not prune your vineyard. Do not reap what grows of its own of your harvest, and do not gather the grapes of your unpruned vine, for it is a year of rest for the land. And the Sabbath of the land shall be to you for food, for you and your servant, and your female servant, and your hired servant, and for the stranger who sojourns with you. And for your livestock and the beasts that are in your land, all its crops are for food. And you shall count 7 Sabbaths of years for yourself, 7 times 7 years. And the time of the 7 Sabbaths of years shall be to you 49 years. You shall then sound a shofar sound on the 10th day of the 7th new moon, on Yom HaKippurim, cause a shofar to sound through all your land. And you shall set the 50th year apart, and proclaim release throughout all the land to all its inhabitants. It is a Yobel for you. And each of you shall return to his possession, and each of you return to his clan. The 50th year is a Yobel to you. Do not sow, nor reap what grows of its own, nor gather from its unpruned vine. It is a Yobel, it is set apart to you. Eat from the field its crops. In the year of this Yobel, let each one of you return to his possession. And when you sell whatever to your neighbor, or buy from the hand of your neighbor, do not exploit one another. According to the number of years after the Yobel you buy from your neighbor, and according to the number of years of crops he sells to you. According to the greater number of years you increase its price, and according to the fewer number of years you diminish its price, because he sells to you according to the number of years of the crops. And do not oppress one another, but you shall fear your Elohim, for I am Yahuwah your Elohim. And you shall do my laws and guard my right rulings, and shall do them, and you shall dwell in the land in safety. And the land shall yield its fruit, and you shall eat to satisfaction, and shall dwell there in safety. And since you might say, What do we eat in the 7th year, since we do not sow nor gather in our crops? Therefore I have commanded my blessing on you in the 6th year, and it shall bring forth the crop for 3 years. And you shall sow in the 8th year, and eat of the old crop until the 9th year. Eat of the old until its crop comes in. And the land is not to be sold beyond reclaim, for the land is mine. For you are sojourners and settlers with me. And provide for a redemption for the land, in all the land of your possession. When your brother becomes poor and has sold some of his possession, and his redeemer, a close relative, comes to redeem it, then he shall redeem what his brother sold. And when the man has no one to redeem it, but he himself becomes able to redeem it, then let him count the years since its sale, and return the remainder to the man whom he sold it, that he shall return to his possession. And if his hand has not found enough to give back to him, then what were sold shall remain in the hand of him who bought it until the year of Yobel. And it shall be released in the Yobel, and he shall return it to his possession. And when a man sells a house in a walled city, then his right of redemption shall be at the end of the year after it is sold. His right of redemption lasts a year. But if it is not redeemed within a complete year, then the house in the walled city shall be established beyond reclaim to the buyer of it, throughout his generations. It is not released in the Yobel. The houses of villages, however, which have no wall around them, are reckoned as the fields of the country. A right of redemption belongs to it, and they are released in the Yobel. As for the cities of the Levites and the houses and the cities of their possession, the Levites have a right of redemption forever. And that which is redeemed from the Levites, both the sale of a house and the city of his possession, shall be released in the year of Yobel, because the houses and the cities of the Levites are their possession in the midst of the children of Israel. But the field of the open land of their cities is not sold, for it is their everlasting possession. And when your brother becomes poor and has his hand failed with you, then you shall strengthen him, and he shall live with you, like a stranger or a sojourner. Take no interest from him or profit, but you shall fear your Elohim, and your brother shall live with you. Do not lend him your silver on interest, and do not lend him your food for profit. I am Yahuwah your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim, to give you the land of Canaan, to be your Elohim. And when your brother who dwells by you becomes poor, and sells himself to you, do not make him serve as a slave, but as a hired servant, as a settler he is with you, and serves you until the year of Yobel. And then he shall leave you, he and his children with him, and shall return to his own clan, even return to the possession of his fathers. For they are my servants, whom I brought out of the land of Mitzrayim. They are not sold as slaves. Do not rule over him with harshness, but you shall fear your Elohim. And your male and female slaves, whom you have from other nations that are around you, from them you buy male and female slaves. And also from the sons of the strangers sojourning among you, from them you buy, and from their clans who are with you, which they shall bring forth in your land, and they shall be your property. And you shall take them as an inheritance for your children after you, to inherit them as a possession. They are your slaves for all time. But over your brothers, the children of Israel, you do not rule with harshness one over another. Now when a sojourner or a settler with you becomes rich, and your brother with him becomes poor, and sells himself to the settler or sojourner with you, or to a member of the sojourner's clan, after he has been sold, there is a right of redemption to him. One of his brothers does redeem him, or his uncle or his uncle's son does redeem him, or anyone who is a close relative to him in his clan does redeem him. Or if he is able, then he shall redeem himself, and he shall reckon with him who bought him. The price of his release shall be according to the number of years, from the year that he was sold to him until the year of Yobel. As the days of a hired servant it is with him. If there are yet many years, according to them he repays the price of his redemption from the silver of his purchase. And if few years are left until the year of Yobel, then he shall reckon with him, and according to his years he repays him the price of his redemption. He is with him as a yearly hired servant, and he does not rule with harshness over him before your eyes. And if he is not redeemed in these years, then he shall be released in the year of Yobel, he and his children with him. Because the children of Israel are servants to me, they are my servants whom I brought out of the land of Mitzrayim. I am Yahuwah your Elohim.